From ambiguity to OMG-what-am-I-doing? She's a digital equity researcher, youth worker, and an artist. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Alicja Pawluczuk.
Should I just... You know, when someone tells you to prepare a talk like this, as a typical procrastinator, what you do is you open 100 tabs and you search for tips. How do I become a good TED talker? What do I need to do, right? And one of the tips that I found was be vulnerable, but not too vulnerable, because you need to stay credible as an expert. So I thought about it really hard, and I decided to start with this. Am I a massive fraud? Am I supposed to be here? Like, am I really an expert? So the thing is that in recent years, there was, after the pandemic, people were in need of digital youth work experts, and suddenly I became one. My face was all over different webinars, and I would just see my face going, yeah, she talks about digital transformation and digital youth work, but does she really know what she's talking about? And I think with all of that, all of the work that I do, the fact that I'm standing here today and trying to interact with you, is I'm in need of approval and recognition. So I need you to nod. Okay, thank you. Because otherwise, I have this story in my head and I'm thinking, does she really know what she's talking about? You know, I don't know your unique experiences. I don't know how digital youth work or youth or really, I know nothing. So this is the thing. You are doing this digital youth work, digital transformation work, but it's within this larger framework of shame. And very often, things are changing so fast that it's all about uncertainty, ambiguity, shame, and guilt. And I know them very, very well. But the thing is that we are all here today, right? And digital transformation is a collective process. So in order for me to kind of engage with it in a meaningful way, I need to decenter myself. So essentially, I need to take a step back and say, well, it's not about me. This is about you and our collective journey, right? It's about the person who's sitting next to you. It's about the people that you work with. So it is a collective journey. And you are actually creating it, not me. I'm only here to serve. So the thing about digital transformation is that it is happening all around us, but it's also happening within us, right? The way we feel about ourselves, the way we perceive ourselves, the way we interact with other people, and most importantly, the way we see other people. So shame is a big part of it, right? Scrolling through others people's accounts, shamelessly sharing their beautiful lives, which I also do. The other tip that I found for a good TED Talk presentation was, don't make your graphics too complicated. And I'm an artist, so I thought, okay then, well, let me just share some of my art. This is my moment of fame. So welcome to this talk. This is where we're gonna go on a journey between, oh my God, ambiguity, what am I doing, to potentially circling around shame and thinking about how that relates to our practice. I'm Dr. Alicja Pawluczuk, and I work at Leeds University, where I recently set up a digital youth work research hub. You are welcome to join it. And I'm also an artist, and here is a shameless picture of me having a nap in my art studio, just for your entertainment. So I want to start with my story, because you got to make it personal, right? I moved to Scotland as a young Polish migrant. I wanted to do something with my life. I really wasn't sure what. But I remember kind of getting into this video place, community video place, Pilton Video. I walked in, I saw quite a lot of equipment, and I was like, I want to be part of it. So as a 22-something Polish person in the UK with incredible housekeeping and cleaning skills, I said, you need to have me here, I'll help you how to clean, and in return, I'm going to learn how to use video. And they were like, yeah, okay, but you can just use video. You don't need to clean our toilets. I was happy with that. And I'm only saying this because it's been so many years, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the digital youth work sector, and especially the one in Scotland. As a young Polish person, I'm the outcome of their work. And so I just want you to know that the reason that I'm here is because of the community and their support. So it's like I'm standing on the arms of like so many youth workers. So thank you, Scotland. And I want us to take a moment to think about the room that we are in, because this room is very special. We've got change makers, innovators, creators, right? So if you just look to the side, you can probably just like imagine like how many lives has this person changed already? How has my life been changed by the people that I worked with? Young people, other people in the field. You know, just take a moment to appreciate your work and all the hard things that you've learned here, regardless whether you felt good about it or bad about it, you know, and whether you were exhausted. But we need to address the panda in the room, or the elephant in the room. Because we are here, and that's beautiful. We are a wonderful group of people, open-minded mostly, I guess. We are happy to learn about digital technologies. But who's not in the room here with us? You know, there are lots of people out there who do not have these opportunities. And we need to remember that digital equity, which is a huge part of my work, very often intersects with other socio-economical factors, right? So for the people that are not in the room, their access to technologies, understanding of it, relationship to it, might be affected by multiple things. Your disability status, your age, your race, your gender identity, whether you are living in the city or outside. All of these things have a massive impact on the way you are going to engage with digital technologies. And so it's important to kind of think about that within the work that we are doing, that we are all engaging with digital technologies differently, and very often digital poverty is linked to social economic injustice, okay? And there, as a researcher, I've been studying it for a while. Doesn't say that I'm always right, but there are statistics out there that prove that. So in recent years, I have been doing more work around digital youth work and the divides within youth work. And so if we think about the people who are not in this room, there is a huge landscape of youth work and education. And from my experience, while chatting to youth workers for a number of years now, I realized that there's a huge divide, you know, between those who are digitally capable and setting up hubs with, you know, VR and all these amazing opportunities, but we also have hubs that sometimes maybe struggle to pay electricity bills, right? And if we think about the aspects and the statistics of digital equity, we also have to remember that there are many groups that are not even in the statistics, right? Just recently, I worked with Roma community around their digital inclusion needs. And if we think about that, we don't really know much about the community because very often it is omitted in the statistics when we talk about digital equity. So just for yourself, think about some of the limitations that you might have experienced in your clubs or some of the other projects that you know that experience some issues. And here's a bingo. Since 2014 or 15, I've been chatting to youth workers about their experience of using digital technologies. And you know, you can create an entire book about the statements that are out there and the way you yourself feel inadequate. And this is from, you know, I'm just tired. I wanna do things offline. Actually, I'm exhausted. I don't want to go there again. I don't want to constantly improve myself. Like, when does it stop, right? So the bingo, I'm happy for someone to create it into a game. Proposals after the chat. One of the big issue as well that I found through my research is that when you go around and talk to youth workers, they often have to present themselves as digital enthusiasts. Something like, yeah, I'm up for it. Digital transformation, oh my God, I love it so much. Like, give me more. And this is a huge issue, right? And it's an issue which is sometimes a systemic issue as well. And let me tell you why. It is about, you know, when you do the impact evaluation, oh, you have to say, yeah, it was great. We are all digitally empowered. We're going to change the world right now, okay? And so I remember doing this big project around social impact evaluation, and some people were like, you know, even when we fail or where things don't work, we need to turn it into a success story. So yeah, someone broke a leg, but we like turn it into an algorithm, and it helped the entire world. You know, so turning these narratives, and I call it like digital empowerment regimes. It's very much kind of linked to capitalism and neoliberalism, and like, you know, you gotta get better. You gotta get better. There's no time for shame or, you know, feelings. So my narrative around this is this, right? If we continue to share success stories, we don't really learn that much about what's really going on in the field. And here I'm saying this, not expecting you to out of a sudden just fail all the time, but it's to acknowledge the system that we are in, where we are celebrating the best of the best, but not creating a space where we have time to say, oh, actually, this doesn't work, because this is the current reality of digital transformation. And creating typical metrics for the next 20 years just doesn't make sense, because digital technology is changing every day, right? So can we shame our way into digital inclusion? If I shame you enough, will you finally have a nice password? Yeah? Can I shame you into liking my likes? Can I shame you into being digitally literate? Mm-hmm. This is the question, and especially when you need to pay for your bills and you probably, you know, you cannot pay for your electricity. This was intense, and there are tips and TED Talks that this is the moment I should give you a joke. Okay? I know approximately 0 jokes, but for this occasion, I've managed to create this one. Knock, knock, who is there? Digital transformation. Digital transformation who? Yeah, digital transformation. I'm your new horizontal priority in the EU youth programs, understood as a multi-stakeholder and inclusive process encompassing the co-design, implementation. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Very comprehensive definition. And I wonder, who should we cancel for that? You know, should I be ashamed of the thing that we've done over the last few years? Maybe, maybe. But this process is a mess, right? And trying to take a definition and then create it into something that would be meaningful to you without putting it into words is kind of impossible. I tried my best. And this was part of a group, just so you know. So digital transformation is unapologetically messy. But saying that, if you go to Salto Digital, there are resources out there that talk about digital transformation in terms of sustainability, well-being. So there are some resources out there, and this is where I sound like a digital transformation teacher. The shame is on you for not checking the resources. So going back to this idea of shame, I'm sure many of you know Brené Brown, and she's like the researcher around shame. And something very important about shame is that it is the fear of disconnection. And in the context of digital transformation and the work that we do with young people, like, this is so relevant. Are we disconnecting from them? Are we disconnecting from our community to become someone else, to fit into other communities? Are we disconnecting with ourselves through digital transformation? And there isn't a solution to obviously make things better, but one of the things that I could maybe mention is to kind of realize that within the shame network, I feel that it is important to recognize that this is a system, and that I'm not here to tell you that you need to fix your shame, or that you are a startup and therefore you need to improve yourself day after day, and you need to know all the news about AI and it's all on you. It isn't. It isn't. It is on us to think about the system that we are in and how to potentially change it so it isn't all on you. You're trying your best. All of us are trying to do our best within the limitations that we have. And a few things that we can consider is boundaries, understanding our limitations. In my work, this isn't something that I do, perhaps, or this is something that I need to take a break from. And then emotional literacy. How often do we talk about emotional literacy in the context of digital transformation? How often do we check with ourselves about how we feel when this algorithm is telling me that I should be size 0 with whatever, And also thinking about collective care in the field. And this is when I'm talking about who is not here in the room with us, okay? To bridge the divide between those who are the exceptional digital youth workers and educators to those who are barely surviving, it is important that we reach out to these people and that we try to share the knowledge that we have. Just like with anything in digital transformation, it is networked. The way you see yourself is networked to the way you follow people. The algorithm is telling you something because you're networked to someone. So I would say that to fix the digital divide, it is about our collective work. And so one of the things that we could also think about, and I'm coming to an end, so I still need your notes, is what actually does get in the way of that meaningful connection. What does make you feel shame? And to what extent do you live around a certain set of assumptions? What it means to be digitally literate, what it means for young people to be good digital citizens, what it means for adults to be good digital role models, right? Because I sometimes feel that when we judge young people for scrolling too much, this is the assumption right there that disconnects us from them. And also, in reverse, by othering them, by judging them, we are harming ourselves with these assumptions, right? So for a moment, take away all the assumptions if possible, and I know you need to be in a position of privilege to recognize these. So I also am realistic about that, the limitations of that. One more thing, that these assumptions and the way we look and generalize maybe young people and ourselves on the way we engage with digital transformation can lead to more divides, right? So in order not to contribute to the divides, I would say, let's take a moment for ourselves without the shame. Some music. This is it. The final tip, make sure you have a memorable ending. But what if there isn't one? What if digital transformation is just about continuously living through a cycle of shame that will never end? And what if we actually enjoy it? What if shame is driving what we do? And what if shame is here to stay and it will just wear different hats?
Hope you had some nice sharing, and now it's time for you to share your thoughts or questions. So I open the floor. Who wants to start?
There we go.
Yes. A mic is coming. Please stand up, say your name and your role, if you haven't yet, so we can recognize each other and value each other as well.
Loud enough, I think everyone is wearing that as well. Okay, my name is Mataz, project manager, and for some of you, quite annoying. My question is more towards maybe a bit of a removed field, but have you heard of Amy Edmondson? Amy Edmondson works within kind of organizational learning, and her concept is psychological safety. And it's more related to workplace environments. But the entire idea of psychological safety is being able to make mistakes and not being punished by your manager, leader, whatever, and then learning from it. And she also works on the concept of basically emotion. And shame is a negative emotion that can hinder learning. So do you think that this is something we need to start with from the youth and go all the way into organizations in the long term? Because she focuses solely there, but you're discussing a lot in youth work here and education. And how do we kind of work towards removing shame and maybe also including shame in other concepts? Because I think you're the first person I've spoken to that looks specifically on shame as the emotion, while psychological safety talks just a lot about being allowed to make mistakes and not being punished.
Yeah.
It doesn't really cover emotional concepts.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And would you like? Okay. You know, it's very tricky because I feel like shame and vulnerability have also become these keywords that are being thrown around. And so if you look at the tech startup culture, there's all these discussions around being agile and, you know, doing this and that. And I wouldn't like it to become this, right? Because there's also this culture of, oh, you need to be resilient and you need to be like cool, and sometimes that's extremely unrealistic, right? But it's, again, with the safety on its own, I have a feeling, and something that I learned from the field as well, is that safety, there's a safety fatigue for sure. And there is the emphasis on safety is also like, oh, you got to protect yourself, right? Again, it's put on you. So I remember working on this one project around gender digital divide, and it was about girls. And, you know, if we just teach them digital literacy, they will be safe online. And that to me is like, you're not going to stop violence online, misogyny and sexism, if you tell girls to disappear, you know, or use it in a certain way. So it's not to say that safety is an abstract construct, but I think it has these connotations of like, you just need to digitally exclude yourself, or perhaps, you know. So that was my first thought that came to me when I heard the psychological safety. Saying that, I feel like within all of discussion around digital literacy, we don't really talk about emotional literacy, you know? Emotional literacy is something of an abstract that is like floating around somewhere, and we don't really have time. You know, you have the mindfulness, you have this, all of it is about self-improvement, right? So you always have to become the better version of yourself. And what I would like to see in organization structures, schools, education, is this idea of collective care, perhaps, and actually returning to this like very basic care for someone else and seeing yourself as a part of a system. But at the same time, I respect looking after yourself and being an individual, right? So I have no idea how to get there, especially now that Trump got elected, which shows us that that these values are perhaps not the most important, right? But emotional literacy, I would love to see more of that everywhere. Because only then you can learn so much about disinformation and how to spot disinformation, but unless you actually know how it makes you feel, like unless you know more or less how you're feeling, how does that make you feel angry, or does that make you feel like, I'm gonna share it, you know? I hate this. That's another story, so I think, and I'm probably not answering the question, but yeah. Yeah.
No, I think you answered very well, and I think it's a concern that we have, that what is the role of organizations in this, not just the individual role or the EU policies, but the organizations we build and the organizational cultures we're part of. What's their role in building this well-being, shame-neutral environment? And like you said, I think we have to collectively think how to get there.
I think there is... Yeah, the corporate responsibility for well-being is another minefield, right? Because, for instance, at my university, I need to do like a well-being quiz online. And that's like, oh my God, can you spare me the quiz? Like, I need some meaningful support. I need time. I need to know that I am safe. we are all in this precarious reality with like limited resources, and I think that's something that that needs to be considered. So structurally, I think it requires a bigger conversation that we should expect to happen, right? And acknowledging that there's a mental health crisis. And it's, as much as social media plays a big role, some role, it's not just that. It's like the person next to you, it's your work, it's climate catastrophe, it's this, it's that. So it's like lots of things. Yeah.
So advocating for our right to have these conversations.
Yeah, and I would also say that one of the things that I didn't mention during the talk is like digital equity is also about having the right to stay offline, It's not just about, exercising your rights, your human rights in the digital environment. It's also being able to function without having to go online. And we often forget about that. And I feel like lots of digital transformation conversations can happen offline, and like they do here, right? So I'll shut up now.
Thank you. No. Let's have more questions from the audience.
Okay, that was my music too. Jutta, coming from Finland. In our groups, we didn't. Okay. So in our groups, we didn't relate it to this shame so much.
Sure, yeah.
So wondering that should we be now shamed because we didn't understand understand why there is a shame and in this matter, and does it more mystify the digitalization and digital youth work if we are talking about that there has to be shame? Because, for example, I'm totally happy with this shameless mood and working with the people who know more than me, and I feel pleasure of that.
And I think that's amazing for you to be in this safe conditions where perhaps you don't need to worry about shame, or perhaps you are in an environment where shame hasn't become a form of control, right? Or success stories, or perhaps, I think it's very much contextual. So I think it's like every culture has a different approach to shame, right? If you are more in a collectivist society, perhaps that isn't so focused on individual things, might be slightly easier with shame, right? I come from a culture that shaming was a way of like making you better, right? So in Poland, growing up as a kid, it was just like, by shaming you are knowing what to avoid and how to fit into social structures. So I think it's very much contextual, because shame triggers are very different in every culture. And I also feel that it's a form of privilege not to feel it, right?
It might be that I'm using different words.
Maybe.
In that, but not shame.
Yeah, I think it's also, like I said, about guilt, shame, feeling inadequate, feeling that you need to always try harder. And so for me, this has been all the interviews that I've done, all the focus groups, workshops. It's always been like taking the first 20 minutes to have a group therapy session about how much we hate the conditions that we are in, very often, not always. And then only then, by recognizing that we share this, whatever that means, then we can, so how do we move forward? And I feel like creating spaces where we can talk about this is very important. But then just like, go, here, I feel like we need this space to talk about these things, whatever we call them. And I think, based on what you've just said, I mean, this is amazing. And that you don't feel it, that perhaps you approach work with that, sense, and maybe you don't impose it on other people. So I think it's amazing, yeah.
And I would add something to that. This is maybe taking the conversation to another focus, but I think it's an important focus. Young people, they also feel shame in this digital transition, even if they are more fluent in these tools, right? What do you, from your research, I don't know if you looked into that, but what kind of shame do they feel in this transition? Besides shame of us not knowing, cringing when we don't know.
Well, I think shaming the younger generation for the fact that they're online has become a bit of a narrative that has been overused, and I always try to take a step back and think like, hold on a minute, this entire tech culture system has been created by adults, large tech companies, and also many parents and carers use digital technologies as well, extensively. So shifting that blame from this generation is this, they're always on there. All of that, I think it requires like a more systemic analysis and like just being mindful. Because I remember years ago, I had this, I was like teaching at the university, and I had this one slide that I used again and again, and it was like from this very trashy newspaper in the UK, and it says, digital heroin, how the new generation has become junkies, or like the modern day junkies, And this whole thing was just like, okay, if this is how newspapers frame young people, then it's like problematic, right? Because they have their rights, they have, they're wired differently, they grew up in this environment, but I think shaming them for what they do, or how they behave, or the conditions that they live in, isn't the way to make someone digitally included or become digitally literate. Do you know what I mean?
Or get the social skills also for human interaction.
Yeah. And there's research there that the more you shame someone for doing something, or the more you say, oh, you take a step back, it's like you only gain resilience by doing something. So only by being exposed to what's happening, you will know how to react to these situations. And yeah. So, but then I know that in Silicon Valley, parents don't give their kids iPads or whatever. But come on, this is like top of the privilege of like where you can,
Not the kind of, there's not a Silicon Valley everywhere in Europe where we live. All right, more questions. I don't know who's next.
Hello. Just wanted to say, amazing talk. I love your work. I've read it. And so a lot of the research that you've done, and you've mentioned it there, is in and around the youth sector, and in particular the community in Scotland, which are really, really active. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm really mindful, and it's my experience over the last few days, that we have some really willing teachers in the room, and people who are working in the formal education sector. And I wonder, is there learnings in terms of how, as an educator, you can improve your confidence and support yourself to really tackle that shame in a classroom setting that traditionally, I suppose, would expect you to know more than the young people that you're actually supporting to engage in something?
Yeah. No, thank you. And I feel like, so the research that I've been doing around digital youth work has been initially in Scotland, but then it was like in different places, right? And I have had my moments of shame where I went to places, remember running this workshop in Azerbaijan with people like from Armenia, from like Belarus, and I went into this room with this like, hey, let's get you digitally empowered. And it was just like, and I was like, oh shit, and then I realized that digital youth work is such a Eurocentric concept that it's just like, hey, let's do this. So I do realize its limitation, right? And this was a great shame experience for me, and I've learned a lot from these. Saying that, I have very limited information about formal education, because I feel like, but then again, here chatting to the teachers, I also feel that teachers are also trying their best, and I heard stories about teachers talking about other teachers and how they need to, not only they need to defend their position of like being the weird one, but actually taking on board the criticism of maybe the entire school that is sitting in this narrative of like, we need to ban phones, mobiles. So what I would like to say is I don't want to go into this, because you've mentioned confidence, right? And there is a really interesting study around why girls, it's like going back to the 90s, and they say, why are girls not so represented in digital technologies, you know? Why are they not there? And someone said, oh, it's a confidence problem. It's because they're not confident enough. So since then, there has been, I don't want to swear, lots of programs tackling confidence issue and saying, if you're confident enough, you'll be fine. You know, you just become a girl boss, you go into coding, and that will fix you. And I just want to recognize that as a form of oppression, and they call it neoliberal feminist, where it's like, it's your fault. It's not about the systemic injustice, it's not about violence, it's not about all these issues, and there's quite a lot of issues in the tech sector around misogyny. It's about you. So I would say, for the teachers, I wouldn't like them to think that, oh, you need to gain more confidence or whatever, but actually, how do we change the system? What are the conditions that you need to actually be okay with the fact that you're not confident enough? Because it's not up to you to constantly improve yourself. Like, come on. Yeah, so. But it's easy for me to say because I'm a researcher, right? It's not my job, so I can just say those things with no responsibility. So, so I know I get that. Yeah.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we are taking down the room.
Yes. Thank you very much. Because of the discussion, I totally agree with you with the collective care part, that we need to ground the digital transformation in a kind of human connection and collective care in order for it to be more healthy, let's call it. But I identify two types of shame, and we are talking about this only one in the discussion, because I do feel that there is some kind of legitimate shame that is a kind of ethical compass that helps a person to recognize when you are cheating on your own values and so on. Is very healthy. Actually, it's very important to feel, to be able to acknowledge this kind of shame. And then there is the shame that is useful for the consumerist system, that somehow is a drive for us to be manipulated and oppressed and so on. So how do you see this distinction between these two types of shame? Thank you.
Well, I've only learned about these two types of shame from you, so let me take a moment to. I'm just because I feel like does it come from shame, or does it come from good intentions? Because I think it's intentions that matter, and then when it comes to guilt and shame, for me it's like a form of control. So perhaps shame is there, of course, it's there to control us and to create certain ways of navigating the society, but they are two different ones for sure. But I think it's I don't know if it's shame actually, the one that you use for yourself. I think it's the intentions that you have and how you want to navigate all these things. And then the broader idea of shame is something that is so normalized that I also don't want to be naive and say, oh, let's get rid of shame, because it's ridiculous, right? It's been there for forever. It's still there. Shaming is a huge part of how we operate and how we define ourselves, right? By shaming someone else or. And I also recognize the limitations of this collective care approach. But I need to think about it more, and then I'll get back to you. Is that okay? Yeah, thank you.
And I would add to that just that I think the first kind of shame that you're talking about, the one that we feel when we are feeling that we are out of our integrity.
Yeah.
You know, when I was aggressive with you because I was upset, and then I reflect and I think, okay, that was not okay for me, and I feel that shame. That's one thing. But could it be, that's a question for you, that we only feel integral now if we know everything? We only feel that the integrity should be that I'm super good at all these things and I'm not. And then that's maybe the wrong perception, right? That we should know, that we should, as youth workers, it is our responsibility to know and to be on TikTok and to be on Snapchat and to know what the young people are doing, because we're supposed to be experts on youth, and we cannot reach it, right? Because it's changing all the time.
Absolutely, and with some of the research that we've been doing for last years, it's always saying come on, give us a break. Youth workers and educators have been just playing this game of catching up constantly, and they are actually taking on the very critical work, which very often isn't covered in like, so for instance, right, a young person might have an issue with like a fake porn or the AI generated porn. So sensitive that you might not go to your parents, you might not go to school, but youth work has become this safe space where you take these very novel, complicated and horrible issues, right? And so I feel like the youth work has taken on so much, and it's not, sometimes it's like it's invisible, right? And the amount of invisible labor, emotional labor that goes into it, to me, I would say, and we've like said it in papers with Salto, there is a need for like thinking beyond the way we are working now, but actually thinking about new ways of support and structures. So for instance, as a youth work club, you would have a dedicated person to talk to who knows different parts, right? Like have access to experts who are helping you, or, you know, I think we need to rethink the way we are even thinking about support now. Because something that I said earlier on as well, in this conversation here, it's like some people said, you know, I can go to like 10 conferences a year, I can attend so many workshops, but at the end of the day, like I don't have time to implement all of these things. I have no energy, and no workshop, no best practice report will fix this. Like we need extra funding and extra expertise in the sector. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have time for at least one more question, maybe two.
Hi. Sorry for sitting down, but
No.
we're tired from sitting in chairs.
I get that.
No shame.
Absolutely.
On the ground. My name is Rama, and I have a question regarding the thing I noticed about our young generation started to empty their anger about the world, what is happening. So, for example, if I open social media, I just realize we are in apocalypse or something, because the news are getting very horrible each day, especially as a person who comes from the Middle East, let's say. And I'm really interested to know, what do you think about using this social media as a place to empty your anger, which leads to shame, right? Like the word is like we are in shame of what is happening in this other side of the world, where we're in a bubble, I think. So, yeah. And what do you think about it? And how can we, like, do something after being shameful of the world?
No, thank you. This is a very important question. And okay, let me start with okay, maybe not the other way around. So there was some workshops that we did throughout the pandemic, and practical steps for not fueling disinformation was actually not engaging with it. So this, practically as an individual, this is something you can do. Perhaps because, you know, the amount of time that you spend scrolling on the negative news, that bumps it up. So just like proactively knowing how your engagement or lack of it when it comes to other news can affect the algorithms, right? But at the same time, the algorithms will do whatever they want to do. And with Twitter, which I use still, because I have a disability community there that I am connected to, and they're amazing. But I know it's operated from, like, by a guy who essentially has a certain political agenda, right? So there's limitations to what you can do with your participation. And now, I think it's also important to recognize that anger is the most viral emotion. And it produces the most content, and it produces the more, like, it's all about money, right? So the most clickable content is anger. And there's different theories around, like, the bubbles. There's some people who say, oh, you're in the information bubble, so you only see people reflecting your worldview. But some people say, no, actually, it's the other way around. It's to actually get you angry, so then you scroll more, right? And so for me, this is like another debate around when we think about democratic education, and this is something that was mentioned yesterday, actually, the critical consciousness around digital literacy. I think it's more than just knowing how to have a safe password, but actually talking about digital citizenship, and this, like, how do we engage with the content, and how do we expect people to do better, policymakers to do better? How are we, who is in place to protect us, knowing that the digital world is run by, like they call it, four riders of the digital apocalypse, right? Amazon, eBay, Google, and Apple, or maybe Microsoft as well. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe eBay. Why did I say eBay? Maybe I just like resent them so much. eBay. Well, sorry, eBay. So it's like, I really feel like there is one thing, the algorithms doing their things, but also if we had like a space for emotional literacy, and actually there was an exercise that I did years ago with young people as a part of this organization that I was running, and it was like reflecting on our first morning scroll and how that makes us feel. And so we would like, on pieces of paper, we would like draw essentially what we see, and we would take like, oh, and now I see, and that was in Scotland, and someone said, oh, I saw a young person stabbing someone, and I was like, oh my God, is this the first thing that you see in the morning? And then we were like trying to connect with our emotions based on every single little scroll, right? And I don't think there is the time for that. But also I wouldn't say that it's just young people, like I would never generalize that young people are like this, that they are just fueled by anger, or that, because also what you see is your world online. So also recognizing that this is, I'm not saying you created it for yourself, but this is created for you. And we have this illusion of agency and ownership over it, illusion that this is what there is. And that's also important to maybe recognize. I see lots of amazing and happy people out there as well, but I also feel that they have a freaking right to be very angry. Yeah.
Thank you, and I think with this one we need to close.
We can chat later.
Alicia, you're going to stay with us the rest of the day?
Yeah, I'm not hiding in my room today.
So let's keep on the conversation also in coffee break. I'm sorry I can't give you the word anymore. And I know you have a request, an invitation for everyone.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. As you know, I'm a researcher, so wherever I go, I want to like find research subjects. No. But I created a little exercise. There's an exercise sheet over there, and you can draw on it or you can write on it. You don't need to add your name. Maybe it's something nice to do after this intense chat. What I would like to do is collect this and turn it into something written about shame and how to amplify this topic in the youth sector. And what I can promise you in terms of accountability is that I will, at the beginning of next year, I will return to you and I will have it written down. So then you can use it in your work. And also I will use it for research, so I will write research papers. So just so you know, if you want to do it, it would be awesome if you could leave it outside. I would really, really appreciate it, but also don't feel pressured, because I don't want you to feel like you need to, like you can't force people to do research, essentially. But I will shame you. No, I'm just kidding.
And outside, we will put maybe some of these boxes outside just for you to place the papers anonymously. So if you want to fill in and leave it, there's going to be a box outside where you can do it.
Yeah.
And just before leaving, so hold on to your papers just before leaving. First of all, a big thank you for Alicia and for answering our questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was so special.
But where's my coach? I'm here because of my coach.
Yeah, it's here.
Yay, coach!